joining us. Welcome to REI Talk. It's our bi-monthly thought leadership webinar brought to you by Real Estate Investor. My name is Neil Peterson, founder and editor-in-chief of Real Estate Investor. And we've been serving the South African residential and commercial real estate industry for over 14 years now through our digital magazine, live events, online content, videos, podcasts, and webinars with insights, education, investment opportunities, and insider info for newbie and savvy investors, and also home buyers, landlords, developers, and also for you, the property professionals and practitioners in the industry. I'm really excited and honored to be your host and moderator for this webinar today. And our topic for today is Semigrate and invest into South Africa's first contemporary new rural town. So we have an esteemed expert panel with us today, and I will ask all of them to introduce themselves shortly. So moving on to our topic for today, Semigrate and invest into South Africa's first contemporary new rural town. So today really is an opportunity to discover and learn about how to be part of sustainable investing. And in particular, we are focusing on the new Crossways Farm Village development community. And we believe that never before has such a unique lifestyle opportunity like this come to the fore for South African property investors. And today we're going to find out a little bit more. In fact, we're going to find out a lot more how to invest into a self-sustaining new town, and in particular this one called Crossways Farm Village. We'll be talking about how to semigrate to a stress-free rural lifestyle off the grid location while still being fully connected to the rest of the world. That sounds like man in heaven. As Louis Glickman said, he said, the best investment on earth is earth. And we will unpack this unique opportunity today. So we have a highly informative, jam-packed webinar today with a stellar lineup of real estate, business experts, thought leaders, innovators that you'll be exposed today. So let's meet our expert panelists for today. So Dr. Chris Mulder, please introduce yourself. It's wonderful having you on today's webinar.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you for my co-panelists that is helping us today, and to all the people viewing this webinar. Just a little bit on myself. I started my life as a farmer, and it seems like I'm ending my life as a farmer here at Crossways Farm Village, which is a blessing. But my life has been blessed with opportunities and risk my whole life. And I've been a risk taker my whole life. And sometimes in life, you are faced with an opportunity and a risk. And you have to decide to dare take the risk or losing an opportunity. Simple as that. To dare is to risk losing your foothold for a moment. Not to dare is to risk losing yourself. And with that, that's how my life started as a farmer. I had the ability to go to university and study agriculture, soil science, soil chemistry. I had no farm, my dad had no farm, and I decided to go and farm. And I took a risk. I had to dare. I had nothing, and I had to dare. So I rented a farm from a guy who didn't want rent, but he wanted 25% of my crop. And I started farming with 2 mules, walking behind 2 mules, planting and scoffing tobacco, cotton, watermelons. And 10 years later, I happened to be fortunate, borrowed money, bought farms, and then I was expropriated by the then government. And I had to dare and risk again. An opportunity arose, and I said to my wife, I think I'm going back to university. I'm going to study landscape architecture at the architecture school in Pretoria. I studied soil science in Pretoria as well before. So I went back, drove back and forth for 4.5 years, graduated, and another opportunity arose. I said to my wife, you know, with this break, let's go to America and study. 4 kids, and 6 in a family. Those were the exchange control dates in South Africa. You couldn't take money out of the country. So the government allowed me 1,000 rand of my money a month for 6 of us to go to the United States, and we took the risk and dare and went there. Magnificent experience, dramatic change in our lives, dramatic change impact on the rest of my life was what was come to be placemaking. And I'll talk about that when we go. But that's how we started at Crossways. That's how we ended up in Crossways. My whole life was filled with placemaking, creating places, doing so. And a place in real estate development and community building is all about placemaking. And I hope that's what we can show today. There's a city or a town or an office block or whatever, if the placemaking is not correct and if the values are not there, which I'll come to later, it's not successful. Places are desirable to the senses that we see. We rate places with our senses: sound, smell, touch, and taste. And that's how everybody in this people, apart from eating, breathing, and sleeping, we as humans use our senses to evaluate a place. And that's what I hope to demonstrate what we're doing here at Crossways is placemaking. I've been involved in placemaking for 40 years. And I'll touch on that. We did in Ghana, Kenya, South Africa. I lived in China for 3 years. We lived in America for 3 years. And then I'll get to the placemaking now, but that's what is. Crossways is about placemaking with enduring value. Thank
Wonderful. I think that's a fantastic introduction there, Dr. Mulder. And I think you couldn't have demonstrated in a better way than that. And I think our next guest is Robert Fox. And Robert, I want you to introduce yourself. And so, yeah, over to you, Robert.
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate y'all joining us. You can probably pick up from my accent right off the bat that I'm the resident Texan of this panel. Chris, Dr. Mulder mentioned that he and his wife, Pat, had lived in Texas for a number of years and studied at Texas A&M. It's where he got his doctorate at. I'm a outgrowth of his dare to pull up roots and to go to Texas for a little while and learn. Just a little bit of my background. I was born in a little rural town on the Texas coast called Lake Jackson. I served about 10 years in the U.S. Marine Corps as a captain. And when I got out, really throughout my entire time in the military, I started thinking about how do we preserve our rural lands? How do we protect mom and pop farms? And that led me to a career in land development. I went to Texas A&M for my graduate degree in land development. And I read about Crossways actually way back in 2000. This would have been about 2014 or 15. I wrote a letter to Chris, and I basically told him, you know what, I haven't seen anything in the world that's anything like this community. It's the best I've ever seen here in Texas, in the U.S. or elsewhere. I'll come work for you for free for a little while at least, if you'll give me a job. And Chris and Pat were gracious enough to find a place for me in Neisner back in 2016. And we've had a great relationship since. Thankfully, my wife, 2 dogs, and I landed here about 3 weeks ago. So we've been working remote here. So look forward to the rest of the panel. And thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to South Africa, Robert. It's wonderful having you here. And thank you for choosing us. And it's good to know that we do have some good skills coming into the country as well. All right, our next guest is Anton Hochlutner. So Anton, do you want to introduce yourself fully, your background?
Thanks, Neil. And well done for getting my surname right.
Oh, okay.
I feel like everyone has started with a Texas story. So Chris lived in Texas and Rob comes from Texas, and I watched J.R. Ewing in Dallas in Texas when I was growing up, but that's about it. You can hear from my accent, I come from the south of Joburg. I currently run a consulting business out of Cape Town, and we are responsible at Crossways for all the ICT, the fiber network, the security, the electronic security, and all of those designs. And Crossways is a very interesting place because it's trying to get modern day people to come and live in the country, and with them they will bring along their modern day expectations for connectivity and security. So it's been a real challenge and something we've really enjoyed doing, putting together a design which we feel will protect the residents, will allow members of the public to enjoy Crossways, whether they're cycling or eating or working, and also to have world-class connectivity for those guys that want to work from home or work from Crossways, and kind of move their lives into that, 3 or 4 square kilometer radius. Thanks for the opportunity, and we look forward to interacting with the guests and the panel.
Yeah, great. Well, great having you on, Anton. And I think, there's a lot of semigration and, trends in terms of people looking to work remotely in smaller towns, and certainly you're the guy that enables that. So, so if the internet goes down, does everybody come running to Anton? So, all right. So, Dave, welcome to you. Dave MZ, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yeah, hi folks. Welcome to the Eastern Cape. I'm born and bred in the Eastern Cape, not in Texas. I spent a little bit of time in Mauritius. I've got an education background. I've been taught at a primary school in Port Elizabeth. I then moved into commerce and industry for 5 years, and my love of sport then took me into the cricket space, where I ran cricket structures professionally for 20 years. I then moved into the golf consultancy space, spent 2 years in Mauritius opening up a golf course, and back to Port Elizabeth, and lo and behold, I'll get back into education at Woodridge College and Prep as the business manager. So it's been a wonderful trip for me, from education back to education. We are situated 25 minutes from Port Elizabeth, and more importantly, 5 minutes from Crossways. So really look forward to any engagement that needs to take place as far as what Woodridge College and Prep can offer in conjunction with the Crossways initiative.
Perfect. Wonderful having you on, Dave, and we look forward to chatting you a little bit later. All right, next is Winston.
For the rest of the panelists, it's an awesome opportunity just to partake of this webinar this morning. Well, I'm born and bred, my name is Winston Lewis, born and bred in Port Elizabeth, Capera, whatever the new name is, still struggling with the pronunciation of the new name, but born and bred in Port Elizabeth, grew up in a construction family, a family of builders. It's got a long legacy. In fact, we are now the 4th generation builders in my family. My father had this pioneering spirit inside of himself, whereby he taught us from a very young age. Since the age of 10 years, we've been taken to construction sites, believe it or not. So call it child labor, but that's what happened in my generation. We were introduced to construction, and at the age of 15, 16, being at high school, I was already building houses for my school teachers. Then, just as we were finishing off our matric, standard 10 in those years, my father then instructed us, or myself and my other brothers, to venture into education. So off we went, and I went into a college called Dower College of Education and PE, and I became an educator. Fast forward from there, 15 years spent in education, being a teacher, doing subjects like woodwork and technical training and stuff like that. Then I found myself also in Texas, being sent to Texas to study monolithic dome building, how to build domes and churches out of dome building in Texas, a place called outside Dallas called Italy. On my return, I lost my right eye. In flight, something happened, and touching down on PE, the next morning I went to see a doctor. A month later, I became blind in my right eye. That forced me out of education. I had to resign my teaching post, and guess what? I immediately went back into construction, being a builder. From there, the list just carries on. I went into civil construction, trying to do civil engineering. I got that under the belt. From there, we moved into fiber optic installations, doing fiber installations from end to end. And then later onwards in the business, I moved into property development as a low-scale property developer. Coming to Crossways, we've been frequenting Crossways since the inception. We were just drawn to the countryside about 8 years ago, I think. Myself and my wife, we would normally rush out of PE, out of the hustle and the bustle of PE, and just for a breakfast out here at the restaurant at Crossways. And for 8 years, I've been frequenting this area until almost by default, I landed up in a meeting with Dr. Chris, whereby I just decided this is now the time to take up residence. So I'm busy moving my assets from PE into this area. I took up residence already. So the idea for me and my family, because we are a family-run business, is now to bring our investment to Crossways. So yeah, that is the long and the short of where I'm coming from. But I'm very passionate about obviously construction and infrastructure building, and also community development. So that is what is ticking me. And then lastly for now, I believe that urbanization is fraught with deception, a deceptional thinking that life in the city is better. But for me, I think going to urbanization, going back to ruralism, that's the answer for me and my family. So that's it for me for now. I'll check it.
Wonderful. No, but Winston, I think that's fantastic. And I think you set the trend for, a lot of other new investors out there. And the first response we got from many of our investors when we first said, if I want to invest in Crossways, but it's for multi-millionaires. And it's definitely not. It's for right the entire community. And I think, Dr. Chris Mulder will get into that a little bit later now. So, but welcome to you. And it's great having somebody who can tell us about your experiences as an investor and as a resident. So moving on to our first question. So Dr. Mulder, we're gonna start off with you, because first of all, let's just tell the audience, because we do have a national audience here, where is Crossways located? Dave did say Eastern Cape, but let's get a little bit more specific. But then I think added to that, what was the whole dream and aspiration? I know you did touch on it a little bit earlier. Do you want to maybe kick off with that and then let us know from there?
Crossways is about halfway between Port Elizabeth or Kobega and Jeffreys Bay, on the banks of the Van Stadens River, which is the boundary between Nelson Mandela Bay Metropole and Kouga Municipality, Jeffreys Bay, Humansdorp, and those areas. We're on the western side of the Van Stadens River, which is, of course, a fantastic, like the Eastern Cape River's deeply incised valley, 110 meters down, 110 meters straight up, of kranzes and clover. The mountains at the back, behind your head, is the mountain range at the back. The N2 runs right through Crossways, both sides of the N2. When I started looking at rural developments, which is basically what I've been doing in placemaking, which I've been doing for 40 years. And the placemaking, we did a lot of placemaking in the Western Cape first, and I did work in France and Portugal and Spain and Namibia and Angola and Kenya, but most of the stuff is Southern African based, environmentally sensitive coastal developments. That's what we've been working on in the last 40 years. Our firm that I've started, CMI, or CMI Architects as it's known now, was involved with that all 40 years and involved in placemaking. And when you address placemaking, I tried it 3 times in the Western Cape and didn't succeed because we were outside the urban edge, which I'll come to now. If you can put up the first slide, we can take it from there and then carry on. The first slide will address, which is a national priority. We all know that. Job creation, a national priority. We all know that. Training, food security, rural development is a big national priority. And of course, climate change. We adjust to the climate change. Now, those were the 5, 6 pillars I built this concept of rural new town on. A rural new town. Why a rural new town? And I'll get to that now. But apart from those 5 concepts, which is very important in our country, because nobody's paying really attention to rural South Africa. And 35% odd live in rural South Africa or tribal land. And nobody's paying attention to upgrading those areas. And I made it my goal for the last 10, 15 years. I'm going to try and do something in rural South Africa, or something of value. Now, what does value mean? Let's get this. Enduring property with a high investment grade is made up of 4 key aspects. And I'm talking enduring value. Just keep that enduring. The 4 aspects which I call the quadruple net value, QNV. The first one is economic value. The second one is social and cultural value. The third one, environmental value. And fourth, sensory value, which I've alluded to when I started my speech. And sensory value is extremely important. I'll get to that in the next slide. And those are the 4 values we always use when assessing a site, looking at a site, planning a site. And I think my strength, if I dare say so, is to read the site, the ability to read a piece of land, the ability to read a landscape based on my earlier studies in soil science and soil chemistry, and then in landscape architecture, and then in Texas, environmental and urban design. My PhD focused on land use legislation and the impact of land use laws on the ecosystem and on the land. And doing so, I did a study, I compared Hawaii and Florida in the US. And I came to the realization, if we go to the next slides, just before I get to that realization, on the next slide, those are the 4 values. I just want to quickly read. Economic value is obvious. You have to make consistent rental income streams. You've got to have consistent absorption and occupancy rates, premium sales price, premium performance, and with that goes capital growth and tax return. That's how the economy works. If there's no taxes, a country cannot exist. Simple as that. And if there's no economic value, a country or a people or a village or a town cannot exist. Simple as that. The next one, social and cultural value. What does that mean? It's the spaces between buildings. It distills the contribution that place makes or reinforces in our positive social interaction and socialization with the place. It comes back to the last one I'll get to now. The cultural heritage, the education, and the development of that place that ingrains an identity and our sense of worth. The third one is environmental value. That's obvious. If you don't look after the environment won't look after you. We have to practice best environmental practices, cost-effective, to enhance the return on the asset. And then my favorite topic, sensory value. I've alluded to that in the beginning. What does that mean? Sound, smell, touch, and taste. We often go to a place and say, hey, let's go eat tonight. Where we go? Now we go to A. Well, A is not so nice. B is nicer. Why is it nice? Why is the place full? Why is a building full of rental people? Why is there economic growth? Why is the properties increase in value all the time? And that's what it's about. It's placemaking and a sensitivity according to these values and what you create. And if that's not there, the building is empty. If that's not there, the place doesn't get sold. If that's not there, the rental incomes can't go up. If that's not there, the buildings stand empty and there's no tax return, no economic value, no investment grade value. And that's all it is. And you can go any place in the country or any place in the world. If these values are not present, the place won't be an economic success. It's that simple, and you can test it yourself. Next time you go to a place and you look at why it's full, just turn around and look what your senses tell you. And with that come to the mind my studies in the States. It boils down. There's only 3 land users. I don't matter what anybody says. In this stage of my life, I really don't matter what people say. I've created places of value. I've been my whole life involved in creating places of value. I'm talking from the Reserve Bank in Pretoria. We were part of the team to places in Johannesburg, Kenya, Uganda, Angola, South Africa, Teeson Island, Brazil Gulf Estate, Belvedere Estate. Those are all places with huge economic value. In Teeson Island, the property is quadrupled 4 times in the last 15, 16 years. Now, if that's not answering QNV or quadruple net value, I don't know what's involved. So I tried 3-4 times in the Western Cape. If you can go to the next slide, And I was bumped on my nose every time. I couldn't get the approval because we were so outside the urban edge. Now, what does that mean? Our planning laws state you have to draw an urban edge around the city or an urban edge around the town. Now, what does that mean? Well, in the Western Cape, it means if you're outside the urban edge, you can't develop anything of significance. That means in rural South Africa. How did the world grew? How did the world develop for centuries? Doesn't matter whether it's in Mesopotamia or in the ancient times in China or India or Africa or Europe or North America or South America. It started as a single dwelling or a couple of dwellings together, which we call a hamlet. First it was agriculture, all pastoral based. Then it was a single hamlet. Then for safety's sake, people lived in a little hamlet. And then a hamlet eventually morphed into a village. And that bracket on the top, this is outside. This is all outside the urban edge. In our country and in most countries today, it's all outside the urban edge. Then a couple of villages resulted in a town. And then a couple of towns resulted in a city. And if we go to the next slide, I can show it very, very much. There it is. Look at the towns, the urban edge, and the cities in the urban edge, and all that white space, all the hamlets and villages, and between the towns and the cities are all rural areas. It's outside the urban edge. And to some people, you can't build or develop there. All our tribal land, all our farmland, all our little villages, all our little towns, which the country is riddled with, is outside the urban edge. And I made it my life goal to establish something like Crossways outside the urban edge. A contemporary, rural, new town, or a real new smart village. Smart village is the key thing. With the advent of internet, and the village has to be smart. Doesn't matter where you are, you've got to have IT, you've got to have fiber, you've got to have security, and it must be economic, it must be job creation, poverty alleviation, and those are the principles I founded Crossways on. Those I tried 3 times in the Western Cape, said no, so I went to the Eastern Cape, said yes, you can do it, but we can't give you access, we can't give you services, we can't give you water, sewer, or whatever, you've got to do it yourself. And I said, that's fine, we'll do it. And that's what we've done. We've created our own sewer works, we've created our own substation, we buy bulk electricity at this moment still from the municipality, we distribute it like a municipality do, we do everything like a municipality do ourselves here. And that's what we've created. We've sold 97 stands, we're launching new developments now, and within this urban edge, we've got approval from the Eastern Cape. And now we're a rural smart village or a rural new town with high-tech security, with fiber, with opportunities, small stands. I always tell the minister was here, when he launched the Minister Quinty, was then the Minister of Rural Development. He launched this project. And we took him to some of the houses that do small houses, other smaller sites, and there's a huge number of small sites, smaller than an RDP stand here. But the planning and the design and the placemaking is hugely different than what you get in RDP stands today. There's no placemaking in RDP villages today, nothing. And I've said that to the minister. There's no placemaking at all because the design and the planning and the placemaking is wrong. So we've got stands here, 250 square meters, 7.3, 8.3 square meters long, 52 meters wide long. And we have 2 garages. We have double-story buildings, single-story buildings. It depends on how you make the place. And then we've got bigger stands, and then we've got bigger stands, and then we've got really big stands. You can choose. And the small stands are not on the one side, and the big stands on that side. They're all mixed together. While we're sitting now in a small stand, where I'm sitting here, where I'm having my temporary office, I can throw a stone into a 8 million rand house for me. But I can also throw with my thumb next door in a small little house and village houses in between. And that to me is the essence of real placemaking today in our country. And that's why I'm so beset on it. I'm going to spend the rest of my living life here developing it. Like I did at Teeson Island. I was on Teeson Island on a quad bike for 10 years developing that place. My quad bike I've refurbished, it's here again. The same quad bike I had at Teeson Island with the registration plate TI1, it's here. And I'm using TI1 driving around the site. And I'm going to be here. And the people used to say in Tees Island, when I get on my bike and I get to the city, oh, daar kom die ou donder alweer. You know, so that's what it is about. And I'm going to make this work, and until I give it my best shot, I dare to take the risk. If I didn't dare, I didn't take the risk, I wouldn't have been sitting here. And I've been taking risks my whole life, calculated risks, not wild risks, calculated risks. It's all based on calculated risk and placemaking. And the last thing I want to touch on is just, we have a rule of thumb. We design everything as labor intensive as possible. And that shows on the slide. This is a we design street lights. This is on the left, the street lights on Tees Island. On the right are the street lights at Crossways. We get local people with local wood. The easiest thing in the world is to take a catalog out of France or Italy or anywhere and order 400 street lights. The money goes out of the country. There's nothing happening here. But we cut the wood here. We make the wood. Some guy make the wood. One guy makes the footing down below with an empty paint can and a concrete. Another guy makes the steel structure inside. 3 guys. Then the 4th guy put it all together. And the only thing we buy is the LED fitting. Now that's job creation. Our refuse removal here on Crossways will be with the community. We will create community contractors to collect refuse with a little golf cart and a small bucket. It's no need for huge trucks or anything. We're going to put the fiber in ourselves with local people. We're going to put, that's why Winston is here to help us. And that's why the team is, everything we do is labor intensive design. The bricks, if we can build a road with brick, we build it with brick. And our design guidelines are very set, and Rob will talk on that. We have opportunities, commercial, industrial, agricultural, growing stuff. And we even have started a hugely successful market now in the last 2 months. We're a victim of our own successes, the farmers market here. And it can roll on and on, but I don't want to take up the other guy's time. I just want to say it's my honor and my privilege to be involved here with placemaking and building this place as best as I can.
Wonderful. No, I think Dr. Mulder, I think you can see you're extremely passionate about this, and I think that's definitely come across to the audience today. And I think we've got to laud you for what you've done. I think you've thought through this very carefully. You got the experience of doing it. And I think the most important is probably building a team around you. And that's when our next guest, Robert Fox, American from Texas, Dallas. And Rob's going to basically tell us a little bit about his personal experience, also in the USA, and what prepared him to play a major role in the development of Crossways Farm Village. So Rob, can you maybe give us your background and maybe compare the USA versus the South African markets? I know you also got some slides for us that you want to share. But yeah, I can see you the guy that's going to be taking the passion from Dr. Mulder, and you the one that's going to take it out to market, and you the doer. So over to you, Rob.
Oh, I guarantee you, Chris and his wife Pat are still doers, but I'm going to do my best to help them. Yeah, no,
Wonderful.
You know, Chris's vision and his passion that's coming through is the reason that I'm here. And I truly do believe that Crossways is a solution that frankly needs to be translated back to the United States. You know, growing up in rural Texas, I'm a hunter, I'm a fisherman. I was in what we call the FFA or 4-H, the Future Farmers of America. I grew up in a rural area around people that were raising cattle and were out on the land as well. And what I've seen in my entire life is that, you know, especially as wealth starts to migrate towards our city centers, our rural areas are starting to be mined for their wealth, and not just their economic wealth, but also their intellectual capacity, their talent, their hard work, their culture even. I saw that in Texas, and as I was wrapping up my time in the military and studying urban design and planning, new urbanist development especially, I started to search for a solution there. How do we bring that back? And less about my background and more about what we're doing here at Crossways. Crossways is first and foremost a rural magnet. You know, we are ideally positioned, and I tell you what, I'll go ahead and bring up my slides here. I'll bring up the master plan. Crossways is ideally positioned along the N2 highway. between, about 30 minutes equidistant between Jeffreys Bay and between Cabeja, which I'm still working on. Give me a couple more weeks. Port Elizabeth, as most of us know it. And we are right along the N2 highway. There's tons of traffic that's coming up and down that highway every day between urban nodes, and not necessarily just urban nodes, but larger towns, larger cities. Crossways is very intentionally meant to be a rural magnet. We treat wealth like it's water. If you're a permaculture designer, you take water and you, first of all, slow it, you spread it across the land, you sink it, and you store it. And that's how you generate wealth in an arid agriculture environment. We do that with economic wealth, with social cultural wealth, with environmental wealth. Our biodiversity here is unlike anything you'll see in any estate community, and I mean the world. Master plan communities in the U.S. Versus Crossways. If you look at our master plan here, just in a macro sense, without thinking about just the details of what the earth sizes are and things like that, you can see how much green there is here. Dr. Mulder talked about the fact that the first thing that the team did was look at the land as it exists before development, when it was still a farm. What are its pros and cons? What are its benefits? What's the natural features? A third of the land today is and will always be conservation land. It's going to be left untouched for us to enjoy. We'll maybe cut some low impact trails and things like that, but it's meant to be enjoyed and meant to let our environment thrive. The next third of the land, what you'll see in light green on that plan, is agricultural land. It's grassland grazing going on for the Putterdills Dairy Farm, our neighbors to our immediate west. There's small scale, what we call crofting, which is small scale farm leases, so that if you're a resident here or even a neighbor, you can lease a 250 square meter plot and you can grow your own vegetables there. Everybody has the chance to get their hands dirty. And then the final third, what you see in terms of our urban and where our built footprint is, roads and utilities and things like that, that's the leftover development land. That's the non-prime farmland and things of that nature. Still has beautiful views, north-facing views and everything you want, but it's not necessarily where your agriculture or your wildlife needs to thrive. So right off the bat, just with our siting, we're as sustainable as we can be. In Texas, it's really not even heard of. We like to build master plan communities where we take a plot of land and we build it to 80% capacity. Maybe we leave a park or a golf course or something left over on the edge that the community manages. But here at Crossways, we start with the green first. We start with nature first, and we let the land talk to us, and we build where it's appropriate, where the land tells us to build. And I think that is a big part of semigration. Our topic today is all about semigration. Forever, for eons, people have been searching for the perfect balance between urban areas and rural areas. We want to have the luxuries and the vitality and the action of an urban area, but we also want the serenity and the calm of the country. There's plenty of books on this. Ebenezer Howard talks about it for all of you urban planning gurus that are joining us. I really feel that Crossways has found that perfect blend. And in large part, that's why I'm here, because I want to bring it back to the States. I'm going to flip forward and talk a little bit more about some of the things that make Crossways a little bit more unique. And Neil, you might have to help me with the slides. There we go. It looks like it's a little slow, a little lag on moving the slides, but a couple things that make us a desirable development and unique in the world of land development. This first slide here that you'll see, you can see an image of everything from a completely natural rural area all the way up to a dense urban core. And on the bottom of the screen, you'll see that you can cut that land into zones based on the balance of urban spaces and natural spaces. That's called Transect Planning, and it's an environmental term that Chris has taken forward and applied to Crossways. We operate towards the left of this image. We operate in a very rural realm, and that means that instead of asphalt streets or concrete streets, primarily you're going to see hand-laid cobblestone and brick. You'll see a little bit of asphalt where we have high intensity, but that, whether you're talking about the street design or the sidewalks or the drainage details, all the way to the street lights that Chris showed you, We are a rural development, and we're intentionally rural. And I think that that's another thing that sets us apart from a lot of communities, estates that move out into the countryside. They take suburban or urban forms and they just transplant them out into the country, so the city just grows. We're an intentionally rural community. Moving forward to some of our opportunities. Crossways has 733 saleable urban just today, fully serviced, not fully serviced, but fully authorized and fully entitled. Of those, we have 98 stands that are already, have been fully serviced and have been sold. One of these concepts that we have is called the Castle Mid-Block and Castle Corners. That's what you're seeing on your screen today. These are some of our most dense units. But what Dr. Moeller was talking about, there's a place here for everybody. Whether you want a 200 square meter IRF or whether you want to stretch out a little bit over a hectare or more, we've got housing, that'll fit you. And it's all scaled appropriately, whether you're in the village center or whether you're out on the outskirts of Crossways. This next image is a good example of a larger farmstead urban. This one in particular is kind of further to our north, but you can see that we've got a nice, tight cluster of houses, but plenty of agricultural land or whatever, green space for folks to stretch out on. Again, something that you don't find in your typical estate community. In addition to the 630 or so residential opportunities that are planned today, we have light industrial and agribusiness sites. If you're an investor and you're looking to get into small scale assembly and manufacturing, if you're an artisan and you want to operate a woodworking shop, maybe you want to open a craft brewery or distillery, we've got sites for you. This is right along the N2 highway. It's got fantastic market visibility and plenty of land to stretch out on. You're also right at Crossways front door as people enter. We've got over, let's see, between the light industrial and agribusiness, over 60 of these stands that are available. And this image here is just a concept drawing that we're working on now, but this is an image of what Crossways Village Center will be. And I'm going to show a 3D rendering here next so you can get the flavor of what this is going to feel like. But you can see that we've got fairly dense dwellings and dense businesses here. These are commercial stands, mixed use stands where you have retail on the bottom, restaurants, and then apartments on top. Your density is contained and there's land around it. And so it's a proper village center, a living tradition, the way that we've always built our towns. And if you see it up close and in person, what you're going to see is all of the luxuries of urban living. You've got your bookshop on the left-hand side. You've got maybe a coffee shop on the right-hand side, offices for your dentist or your lawyer or whatever on top. But the streets are still cobblestone. The drainage is still above ground. And you've got a pop-up bazaar so that we can incrementally develop. We can give entrepreneurs opportunities to come in at a low leasing rate without much overhead so that our town can grow the way that towns have always grown throughout time, incrementally, naturally, the right way. And that's all I've got. So thank you very much. Move on to the next panelist.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Robert. Obviously, I think the whole picture is sort of unfolding of Crossways, and I think more as it unfolds, it's unbelievable to see the amount of thought and time that's been put in to put this kind of development together. And also on that note, certainly, let's talk about security, safety, technology, and how does that apply to Crossways? And Anton Hochredner, he's going to share with us how did you apply that to Crossways, Anton? And I think, was it different to any other normal development you would have done?
Thank you. Thanks very much. The quick answer to that is Crossways is incredibly different to the majority of estates you find in South Africa. Crossways is not, portions of Crossways are not a high security estate. They are places where visitors are welcome, not only tolerated. Visitors are welcome to come and work, to come and have a meal, to come and interact in the town center. So Crossways deliver, the requirements of Crossways are quite different. Not only that, there are bicycle tracks for mountain biking throughout the village and in the mountains and the cliffs. So it presents a unique challenge, certainly a unique to us, but a unique challenge in that it's not an estate where we are trying to keep people out. We're actually trying to bring people in, but we are trying to protect residents. We will be monitoring people while they are in the village, for their own safety and for the safety of residents and other users of the property. From a technology point of view, we will be a full fiber optic FTTH, FTTB network will be installed, taking fiber to every single home and business. It's just an absolute requirement of modern living. In fact, I would query whether Maslow's hierarchy of needs hadn't changed, where, and I often wonder, certainly in my home where I've had teenagers in the last few years, I know that a working sewerage system, food in the fridge, and fresh air are second to high-speed internet. And I'm sure most of us are like that, and especially our visitors to the webinar that are sitting in cities must be thinking, how are we going to keep the children entertained on a farm? So we will be providing that. From a connectivity point of view, we're very fortunate in that the N2 fiber line between Durban and Cape Town has just come straight past our boundary. So we will be making use of that from a backhaul connectivity point of view. So it's pure fiber straight connectivity, which is important because I think what happens in a lot of places like Crossways is a higher reliance on wireless. And but as you've picked up from Chris and Rob, we intend to be self-sufficient in that score. Just to emphasize the kind of vision of the development team, that we will even be building our own data center at Crossways. So what we hope will generate revenue for the village. It's a point of presence for telcos. It could be data storage for companies that buy in. And it certainly is our hub where we will provide data, TV, voice over IP, and Wi-Fi services from our data center hub, located at Crossways again. So moving on to the security of the village, as I said, Crossways is in the portions where the general public are encouraged to come, is very much a monitoring and reaction kind of urban surveillance ethos. We will have license plate recognition. We'll have it tied into local armed response. We'll have it tied into local control rooms and SAPs. And we will try to integrate ourselves into the greater community and the information that flows around in those forums. We will be using CCTV, a lot of CCTV. Crossways, being by its very nature non-high security, and also very few people actually live close to the boundary fence. So the fencing is a standard electric fence. It's well designed to mostly keep out the local baboon population, and it does its job. We'll be adding to that with fence detection so that we can be getting alarms of any kind of intrusion, and through a setup of pan and tilt zoom cameras, optical thermal cameras. We'll be proactively monitoring the village from a central command and control center, 24-hour manned, with the use of drone technology, because our village is big, and sometimes getting around it can be problematic, especially late at night. So we'll be automating drones into our security thinking and into our response, armed response on site. And just this integration of technology and security fully expandable, and that just fits with keeping people who live there as safe as we can and keeping our visitors safe, but in the process not being overbearing. And yeah, I think I've touched on everything we're busy with there.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Thank you, Anton. I think it's you've spelled it out very nicely there. Dave, yes, we're getting back to you. We're already 5 minutes to the hour almost. We're still going on till 12:30. We're going to get through quite a few questions, and we only get to you now, but you've done your intro. Now, you must tell us the role at obviously Woodridge College and maybe describe the relationship that you have, particularly between Crossways and the school, and maybe just talk about the proximity of the school to the development and the approach of the school curriculum, just the fact that you're all in a fantastic outdoor environment. You want to maybe just share that, Dan?
Yeah, I've been at Woodridge since February last year. And one of the first things I did was to scan our environment and try and make contact with our neighbors. Key to that process was making contact with Crossways, because we don't live on an island. We live as part of an ecosystem, part of a community. Now, I wanted to make sure that there was a relationship between Crossways and Woodridge College and Prep. So we've had a number of interfaces, most of them on a casual basis, but we do have plans for a more structured relationship. But certainly I want to make sure that Crossways initiative and the Woodridge School go hand in hand, and we're able to offer the Crossways population, the Crossways community, a very viable and vibrant education opportunity, education space at the Woodridge College and Prep. So it really is for me quite enlightening to work with Crossways and to know that we can play a part in their success, and they can then play a part in our success to the betterment of the parents and the child. So very positive relationship, one which I particularly enjoy because we chat a lot and we have cups of coffee and strategize. I've learned a bit about the Crossways thinking and the Crossways vision, and they too know the Woodridge space well, and I think we have great respect for each other, and that relationship can only benefit a potential investor.
Okay, because I mean, you know, with families moving into Crossways, I mean, accessibility, proximity of schools is critical, shopping centers and schooling.
Yeah, very much so. What we're finding is a migration from the big cities into the St. Francis and the Jeffreys Bays of the world. Therefore, those children are migrating towards Woodridge as a school. So we're growing our numbers significantly. Last year, we were 729, and we're now 766. I'm not saying that to boast about Woodridge. What I'm saying is living in this environment is becoming more and more popular, particularly with working from home, working remotely, working virtually. People are seeing that it can be done, and to have a school on their doorstep to kill two birds with one stone is sort of like first prize for many people. Hence our growth.
So Dave, just in terms of the curriculum that the school offers, is there anything different, or is there a different subject choice or something that probably is not available at let's call it your average public or even private school? So, I mean, is there something, just because of the environment?
Very, very much so. You know, as an independent school, we offer the IEB examination, which makes you very mobile in terms of universities and education institutions outside Africa, outside South Africa. So come to any independent school, or most independent schools, you have an IEB education. What we have at Woodridge, we think is unique, and we're almost convinced it is unique, is what we call the experience. Our tagline is Woodridge more than a school, an experience. So we have this massive outdoor education program that is endemic within every aspect of the school. So that, I think, sets us apart from many independent schools, in that we're in touch with the environment, we use the environment for leadership opportunities, educational opportunities, and it's sort of like it's not a military Gordiston, but it's not a laissez-faire school where you come and go as you please. It's struck a very, very good balance between those two sort of options, and the kids seem to be happy. be contented and very much in touch with the environment and very motivated to touch the environment, be part of it. So I think that is an absolute uniqueness. Obviously, our size allows us to have an individual touch, and that's what we've got to maybe watch going into the future, that we don't get too big, because we want to keep that individuality very much top of mind and make sure every child is special. We limit our classes to 25 per grade, sometimes maybe 26, but we certainly don't go more than that. So there's an individual homely touch about this modern independent school, which is sort of like contrasting thoughts, but it very much is in that space.
Excellent. No, thanks for that, Dave. Thanks for introducing. And now just moving on to our last. Now, Winston, you're going to have to unmute yourself. We can't unmute you, just to let you know. But Winston, you've invested now into Crossways. You've had first-hand experience. Maybe you can share some of your, I mean, I know in your opening, you really gave us some, you could see the passion came through in terms of your particular career that you're involved in. But I think, tell us about your experience and maybe just a little bit of the lifestyle on Crossways at the moment. Do you want to maybe share that? Because I think there's some people who are saying, well, look, I'm looking at this particular development, and what is it that excites you? Because I know you were very passionate, as was Dr. Mulder, about it when you both started.
Thanks, Neil. Yes, my whole outlook on life is generally to the upliftment of society. With it, obviously, my own life gets uplifted. So living mostly of my life in urban cities, Port Elizabeth, Johannesburg. I've been working also all over the country. And what I normally did when I was doing this country work, I always would look at the landscape of property development. And buying from those experiences, I saw that the option of living in the city is less attractive for myself. And I think the slogan in front of when you enter Crossways says it all. Let's get back to it, or where it really matters, where the gold sits. And yeah, that makes me totally passionate about living here. I've got weekly 2 or 3 visitors coming over here, people that wants to get out of the city. People's really, they found that, as I found it out, that the city life is, it's really deceptive. You think that the life is out there, but the real life exists in the countryside. And it's so timely for me and for my family, and being an investor, to have moved back into the countryside. And I think all of us, one way or another, came from the country. If you look in our culture, most of our families, if you just go 2 or 3 generations back, you will find that they came from the countryside. And we lost a lot. And saying that, it's also, I can see that there's a huge effort from Dr. Chris and the family and his associates. There's a huge effort to sort out the relationship even between Crossways as well as the local community called Thornium. So there's already planning underway, of which we all form integral parts, to have that divide sorted, to make sure that there's a lot of learning that needs to take place, and also a lot of unlearning from our different constituencies. So once again, before I conclude, I would just say that it's awesome to live out here. Everybody that's visiting us, they don't want to leave. And my take from that is everybody wants to invest, and we're looking forward to them coming back. They look forward to coming back. So yeah, for us, it's a no-brainer to be around here. Thanks, Neil.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you, Winston. And now we're going to get to the Q&As. We've got quite a few questions to get through, so I want to go round table. So we're going to start off with you, Dr. Mulder. And it's from Alison Duncan. And she said, we've recently bought a piece of property at Crossways, and we plan to build our house and don't intend on making use of Eskom. Well, you know, we've just had load shedding just before this webinar. So everybody's frustrated with them, as we've lived them without Eskom for 10 years using solar and gas. Quite frankly, I'd rather use a torch than rely on Eskom. That's Alison's comments. So she mentions the whole off-the-grid experience. So she says, Dr. Mulder, the question is, if we are planning on using solar and gas and will not be making use of any Eskom, why, as a buyer into Crossways, do I have to pay for electricity availability in our levies? Do you want to maybe just share that, Doctor?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Availability is a common feature everywhere we go. We have availability of the fiber networks. We have availability of the firefighting in the streets and fire hydrants, which runs past every property. So that availability is a conglomerate of all the availabilities. We cannot isolate electricity availability on its own. It's impossible. If the owner, there are owners already who have opted to go off the grid as far as possible, then it's their choice. But the availability, with maybe at the moment there's going to be 10% of the people off the grid, and in the future it might be go forward. We are looking at providing infrastructure or solar power to the houses. We already have in each house, as part of the availability, also a double water system, irrigations. We've got a potable water system that everybody gets, and we've got a irrigation water system. Every house has got 2 connections, even the one that Alison is going to live in. And the one is a tap for irrigating with farm water and not potable water. So we're separating that, and that's available. The potable water is available, but the use of the potable water will be minimalized by the gardens or the irrigation water on everything. And it's not possible to separate availability just for electricity.
Okay. I'm going to ask Anton a question from Lee. If I invest into a stand, no, wait, sorry, that's the other one. If the properties are off the grid, what technologies will be used to provide energy and water? I assume that falls into your domain there, Anton?
I think it's probably more Rob, to be quite honest.
Okay, Rob, do you want to pick that one up, please?
Absolutely.
I know there was specifically she mentioned for you. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem at all. So Doc had mentioned a little bit about our potable water treatment plant as well. We believe in regenerative development, and that's it's a fancy way of talking about energy, kind of like regenerative agriculture. And what it means is that we don't want to stop at sustainability. We want to actually improve the area around us, and that goes all the way down to the individual household. So if we're talking about water, we currently have plenty of water through our municipal supply, but in times of drought, in extreme times, we also want to buffer and we want to supplement that. And so we've already completed design of the potable water treatment plant that Dr. Mulder has mentioned, and we'll be constructing that early this year. When it comes to wastewater, we already have a wastewater treatment plant that services beyond the existing households, and effluent, and it is filtered not only through the septic system and the bioreactor, but also on into a constructed wetland, so it naturally is filtered and cleaned as well. And we're going to continue with that concept as we move forward in a decentralized stance. So our next stop, having solved sewer and having solved water, the next stop is energy. And working with Anton and a number of other suppliers and guys like that, we're actively exploring the best way, the most cost-effective and the most efficient, proven way of hooking up our households to renewables. As we stand here today, that means that homeowners are installing photovoltaic cells on their own, sometimes their own, battery systems and things like that. But we would like to look into community scale. We are looking into community scale solutions that make us more competitive by striking deals with various suppliers, and by also looking at mass production, mass generation, and what's important is mass storage, battery storage of energy within the community. That's an ongoing task. One of the things that I talked about earlier was incremental development. If you build a town in a day, you end up with something that looks more like Disney World. It's not natural. It's not authentic. These things take time, but we are actively pursuing it, and it's a top priority for 2021, implementing that.
Okay, just coupled to that, Rob, there's a question from Johan. Will there be water supply to stands other than the prescribed rain harvesting tanks, especially on the small agri stands? And will boreholes be allowed metering and billing?
Sure. So starting off, when you're looking at water in kind of the macro scale, it's important to look, you kind of conceptualize it as sources and uses. What are all the different uses that we have on site, whether it's community irrigation or irrigation of our leased agricultural crops, whether it's potable water, whether it's more industrial uses. And there's lots of different sources. Borehole is one of them. We have the rights to extract water from the Van Stadens River, certain legal rights to do that. We've got our municipal supply, and then we have compulsory rainwater harvesting. So yes, today, every stand in what we call Castle Ridge, which is our existing neighborhood, you're linked up first to the potable water supply, and you're also linked up to water that comes from the Van Stadens River. We call it our farm water. Thirdly, you have your rainwater harvesting tank, which, really if you're doing, small scale vegetable production or herb production or whatever at your household, that rainwater tank is really where we want you pulling your water from. But we don't make that necessarily compulsory. It's up to you. So you've got plenty of water.
Awesome. Great. And then, Anton, the question for you, you've actually answered it in terms of how Crossways will manage the security of the village, the fence, the guards, and you gave us that very clearly right up front. So just in terms of the timing of that, I mean, how long does it take this thing to roll out, and when will all the security and fiber be, and how long will it take to roll out? Can you maybe just give us a sort of an estimate of the timing to put this all together?
Yeah, so we've already, the fence and the electric fencing is already 50% up. So if you drive past Crossways, you'll see fencing on the N2. You'll see it on the farm road on the western side of Crossways and on the northern boundary. So the electrification and fencing is well on its way. There is already the sites for the data center, the command and control center, and the security hut and booms into the residences. The area's already been planned, and those are being designed as we speak by the architects. The fiber network, we have an operator who is appointed in the next week or so. We already have our fiber design, full fiber design, and as soon as that happens, construction will start with the fiber backbone. We're already in negotiations with the backhaul providers. So after that, we'll move on to the CCTV and the fence detection. So it all happens, it's basically starting as we speak and rolling forward as we go.
Okay, excellent. Okay, I'm going to get to about 2, maybe 3 more questions, and then obviously a wrap up from everybody. But Dr. Mulder, I want to bring you here again. It's from Alison, and she says, I believe there are preferred architects and builders, which is understandable. Who do we get a list from? Because when I asked for an architect, I was given one architect's name and told at the moment he's the preferred supplier to design on Kloof Edge. We met with another on Kloof Edge and he used another architect. Any person that is building or has any type of work done usually wants 3 quotes. How does that process work? Do you want to maybe just elaborate on that, Dr. Mulder?
Yes, Neil, there is, of course, the town architects who assist us in the conceptual design of every phase and everything. They also were responsible for drawing up the design guidelines that goes with every stand that we sell. We have a set of complete design, first of all, urban design guidelines, which sets the heights and the setbacks. We've got the area design guidelines. We've got street frontages that we want to enforce or guide. But after that, an owner can select his own architect from the panel. There's a design review panel which is on our website. They can approach the design review panel to see who the architects are. That's been approved already. There are several. And then if you have a new architect, you want the architect must apply. There's a certain set of principles that he must set. We just see what he's been doing, the designs he's been doing, and that he uses the guidelines. Every single property is also sold with the design guidelines. You just don't buy the property, you buy into the design guidelines, the constitution, you buy into the design guidelines, and then all the part of the property. I see somebody asked for a building period. I've replied, there's a 5-year building period and a 3-year in the council. But other than that, the only thing, like a builder, you can, if your brother is building, or they can build, but he must apply to be on the building. He must go through an induction course that he understands the rules and the regulations, and then they can do it.
Fantastic. Dave, I'm going to bring you in here. There is people that are interested to visit the farm in March. So you guys are going to have visitors, guys. I know you've got lots of the cyclists and that kind of stuff. And just by the way, I've been to Crossways not once but twice, so I know exactly where it is. I know, I've got the feel for it. So it's not something that we're just doing the webinar. I'm here from a distance. I've met Dr. Mulder a number of times there, and it's really impressive. In fact, we've got one of the members on behind me over here, Dr. Mulder. We've got to talk about your members. Is it 300 members? The cows, as you call them, the members.
Yeah.
400, is it?
I always make the joke when people are visiting here. We've got 400 club members already. Is that so? The club members are all black and white. They've got 4 legs. They mow the lawns for free and they fertilize the lawns for free.
I think wonderful concept. So Dave, somebody wants to visit. Now you're an Eastern Cape boy, and you want to come in and make an informed decision. Any recommended guest house facilities close by? I don't know whether the school has facilities, but I mean, surely, where would you get for somebody if they want to come and visit Crossways anywhere within the proximity? Do you perhaps know? Can you help us on that?
Well, I think Crossways themselves have a rental pool, I think, short-term rental pool. Chris will tell me there, so I would recommend that first of all. But you've got any number of, it's only a 25-minute drive from Port Elizabeth, 30-minute drive from Gqeberha. So that option is it's a double-phase highway, so it's an easy drive. But you've got Jeffreys Bay, you've got the Kemptoos Ferry Motel close by, you've got Aston Bay, you've got Francis, so just Google and you spoil for choice.
Excellent. Great stuff. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for that. I'm just going to get on to final 2 questions aligned with each other. Then I'm going to ask each one of you to give a wrap up and just to give your final thoughts, your parting shots for anything. And it's related to the land. And Dr. Mulder, I think it's for you, but Robert, you can also come in as well. And one of the questions is there confirmation of no land claims registered on the property? And also aligned to that, who is approving the building plans? Is there municipality involved? Maybe, I don't know. Dr. Mulder, you want to maybe kick off with that? You're just on mute, Dr. Mulder. You just unmute yourself. There we go. Thank you.
Now.
We can hear you now. Yes, we can hear you now.
We went through a rigorous environmental assessment program about 5 years. Which was culminated in an approval in 2011, and in that process we've established there were no land claims at all. We involved the Khoisan community in detail here. We involved the local community of Thornhill. I sat in meetings at night with the Thornhill community when we realized what we're going to do and why we selected the site. And as far as I know, we have no land claims. The Khoisan chief was here, and we have pictures there where they were blessing the site, which is important to us, and important to the community as well. And what was the other question? The one was land claims, or was it?
The one was the land claim, and then the other one was obviously in terms of the municipality. Yeah. Approving the building plans. Is there municipality involved?
Yeah, first of all, the plans get submitted to our little municipality via the design review panel to make sure that the architect has done his job and everybody's on the same page and everything is working. And when it's not correct the first time, they get a second chance and we help them until everything complies. We have an arrangement with Koga municipality. That's what we will do. We will assess and approve the plans first for the sake of getting rates and taxes. We then submit it to the Koga municipality so that they also know what's happening here and what's built here. Other than that, we execute, manage, approve everything ourselves. We have our own water, we own water readings, own municipal accounts. Nothing goes out here except rates and taxes to Kocha. All the other levies and all the other stuff are handled here, invoiced from here, assessed from here, maintained from here, and we do all our own in-house municipal maintenance. We collect the garbage ourselves and deliver it to a central point. So yeah, it's a new for everyone, and we have budgets. And I must say, the little community here, we had an AGM yesterday. The little community in 3 or 4 years have established a reserve fund of over 5 million rand by decent management and decent services and decent costs and decent out. And I think there are very few municipalities in the country that can boast with a 4 million, 5 million cash reserve on their bank account today. And we're seriously managing it, but we're managing it well. And that's the other, and we have a finite limit of stands where we can build. In our site analysis, Rob referred to it, excuse me, I just want to mention it. And I mentioned the 3 types of land uses, which I believe in. There's only 3 types of land uses. You have fancy names and fancy this and fancy that, but there's only 3 types of land uses: conservation, agriculture, and human settlement. And this whole area, and my job was to do the site analysis, reading the land, reading the landscape. We're not going into agriculture land. That's one of our pillars. Food security is a pillar. We don't touch agricultural land. I call it a no-go. We don't touch conservation land. It's obvious for environmental value. It's a no-go. Everything that's not worth high value agricultural land or conservation, we call human settlements. So in my book, there's only 3 land uses: conservation, agriculture, and human settlement. You can play with it, you can make it names, but that's what it boils down to. And that's where we keep. We never go into agricultural land. We never go into conservation land. And we only cautiously develop the rest of what sometimes called the uitvalgrond, or the area that's not good for agriculture or not good for conservation. And that we manage. And we're going to rebuild and revegetate. We've ordered thousands of plants for indigenous plants as we take out the alien vegetation under a control program.
Okay, great. Okay, what I'm going to do is, I know there's questions in terms of who's got title on Crossways, and would you allow the tiny home concept? And maybe what we can do when I go around the team, a general question: you're going to develop something similar in the rural age of Cape Town. I know you're involved there, Dr. Mulder, with doing that. So yes, that may be, I'm not sure whether that's still going to be on your radar, but you want to finish Crossways. But I would rather like to just wrap up. We are running out of time, so I'd like to just go around to the entire panel. And then just to give your final parting shots, your final thoughts, maybe just taking the whole concept of Crossways, your particular involvement, and more importantly, the value, as Dr. Mulder said, right up front, the value add. What's that value add? And maybe leaving somebody with just a takeaway. And I'm going to start off with you, Winston, and hopefully you are unmuted. If you can maybe just give your quick, and I'm going to give you about just over a minute wrap up and your final thoughts, and then we'll move right over to you, Winston.
Thanks, Neil. Yes, my final thoughts as follows. I would first of all commend Dr. Miller, his wife, Mrs. Pat Miller, and the family, as well as the associates, for really pioneering this massive undertaking. It's a first of its kind in the country. And in my experience, well, especially in the COVID period, I just saw that in the context, especially of South Africa and indeed Africa, any country that doesn't make sure that the agricultural sector is being taken care of, that the rest of the economy will just disintegrate, And I commend them for this move. And then lastly, as an investor and as a resident of this Crossways Village, I can truly say that the return on investment versus urban city investment, it's a no-brainer for me. So yes, by that's my concluding statement. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I think it gives you the value return in just the area, just the location. I mean, so besides the return on investment in monetary terms is where you're actually living. Dave, your parting shots there, please.
I've got 2 passing shots. The first one is, if I put myself in Dr. Mulder's shoes, can I say to my investors, we can provide you with a good quality education option? I think the man can say yes without any fear of it not being happening. Okay, so I think that the investors most certainly can guarantee a good quality education on their doorstep. The other question, the other point I want to make is we, like Crossways, are a mini municipality at Woodridge. We've got our own environmental waste process, we've got our own sewage process, we've got our own. So everything that Crossways done, we do. Therefore, my conclusion is that the template that we used works in this area, and therefore there's no reason why the template within the Crossways environment shouldn't work, because we are really a microcosm of what Crossways envisage. So that template of self-sustainability certainly works in this area, because we've got 83 years of living proof of it. So there's no reason why it ought not to work at Crossways.
Dr. Mulder, I see you put up your hand. You're going to have the final say, because you're very important. Do you want to comment on what Dave said there?
Yeah, I missed it. I didn't say in the beginning, but you know, when we analyzed the site, when the sales manager who then was introducing me to the site, because we've done other sites as well in the Western Cape, and you know, I was looking for a place to manifest this concept of a rural new town. And one of the things when I drove past here and I saw Woodridge, it was a no-brainer. You know, if there was no school nearby, I wouldn't have touched it. In spite of the risk and the opportunity and the dare, I wouldn't have dared to take the risk. And with a school like Woodridge, literally visible from us on certain areas and so close and accessible, if it wasn't for that, I would have never done it. It would have been possible. So those are the things. There are certain things you look at when you establish something like a rural new town, and that's part of it, you know. And accessibility. Okay. We struggled for 5-6 years before the fiber went through us or went on the N2, and now we have the fiber. We provided for it before, it wasn't available. Now it's available.
Yes, and it's over to the fiber man himself, Anton, and you want to give your wrap up and your final parting shots.
Yeah, so thank you. I just, not fiber related, the first time I ever stayed at Crossways, I actually couldn't sleep because it's too quiet and too dark, you know, being a city slicker. So if you're looking for a place that you actually can see the stars, it's a wonderful place. On the security, as security and ICT, our objective is very simple. We want to create a truly smart village. It's a village where residents and businesses are connected and safe, and a place where the owners, the association that owns it, gets full value from IoT monitoring, and every piece of technology that's brought into the site either creates value, creates revenue, or saves money. So I think that's possibly just a summary of it. Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anton. And your final parting shots there, Robin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's about living traditions. And that's a term that I borrowed from a gentleman named Steve Mouzon from the US as an architect. Living traditions are patterns that are handed down to us over generations from those who came before us. Crossways is a community where we have looked at the best of rural cultures and rural deal making and rural design and all of the, you know, everything that we can learn from our ancestors, and we've put it to play in a modern environment. And when it comes to wealth generation, whether you're talking about monetary wealth, social wealth, environmental wealth, however you want to look at it, you can bet that if you take the time to study what's come before you and study the right way to do things, that you're on sure footing. And it's very important to us. So we've studied the work of those who have come before us, and now we're starting to innovate a little bit with those traditional forms. And when I look at guys like Anton Hochleitner and Winston Lewis and Dave Emsley and all of our other partners that have already invested in Crossways, I think that they're here because they've seen that we've tapped into something that is really unlike anything else. And they've believed Chris's vision and Pat's vision the same way that I do. That's why I came from Texas. And so I hope that everybody else will come out and join us here and partner and put some skin in the game, like Chris always says at Crossways. And so become our neighbors, and we'll move forward together. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for your contribution. Dr. Mulder, it's over to you. You got the final say, and you've got the stand.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for the panel, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about my passion and my vision. You know, I always said, it doesn't matter where you live. You can go back to the ancient times. The old people knew where to live. The Indians knew where to live and where to go. The Chinese did that. The Zulus did that. The Xhosas did that. The North American Indians did that. No matter the South Peruvians, Machu Picchu, the pyramids were all based because the old people, the old settlers, never built a house where it was windy or where there wasn't an updraft, a little wind in the summer, or protected from a cold wind. So did the Xhosas. I walked the conservation areas with Gary Player's brother, for miles and days and days and days, and he had a Zulu partner, Tubu and Tombela, with a little pot in his belt, and we slept in the open spaces. And we got to the space, and Ian Player would tell me, Chris, what do you see here? And I said, I think I see some traces of human settlement. He says, yeah, you're right. Now let's go explore. And sure enough, there was a little hill protected from the side. There was this little Zulu settlement there, 5, 6, 7 houses, and protected from the wind, well-drained soil, close to the water. And you can go through the whole of the Eastern Cape where the old villages are. Those people, the North American Indians, everybody knew where to build. We've lost that part. We do it with computers today. And if you know how to use the computer and you can do the site analysis, we found the right place. And that's the only thing I've spent my life on, creating places like that, creating safe places where sound, smell, touch, and taste come to the fore, and you're safe and you're protected. And that's what site analysis and planning should be. Unfortunately, a lot of people have lost it. I've been 40 years trying to do this, and I think I've had some success to prove it and to say, challenge it, you know, and everybody that wants to talk about it can talk to me anytime.
What? Wonderful. I think on that note, I think what a wonderful way to end the webinar. Unfortunately, we have come to the end. Dr. Chris Mulder, co-developer, Crossways, and Robert Fox, his development manager, and John Hochleutner, he's director at EES Live. And of course, Dave Emsley, he's a business manager at Woodridge College, and Winston Lewis, who's also an investor and resident of Crossways, is really giving us some great insight. Thank you, gentlemen. That's been wonderful. I think it's been a really fantastic, incredible discussion. So thank you all for participating. To our audience, thank you for joining us and your participation today. We hope you enjoyed it and got value from our bi-monthly webinars. Reminder for those attendees who had to leave early, load shedding, all that kind of stuff, or perhaps missed this live version. We will personally send you an email link of the recording of the entire virtual conference. And if you want to access the recording online, you can just go to the REMAG website under shows. You click on webinars and REI Talk, and you can click it there at your leisure, or just go through to the REMAG YouTube channel. So any unanswered questions will be published on the REMAG platform on Ask the Expert section, which is live, free, and we will in fact approach all the panelists here today to actually answer those unanswered questions. And if you do have more questions, send it to info@remag.co.za. So before you go, just need to give you some important reminders. Don't miss our next webinar, The Future of the Office, Flexible and Agile Workspaces. Also a free event. You can just register and click on the link below. And then also a reminder about the Real Estate Investors REI's third annual digitalization summit. Hopefully in future we'll have it in Crossways when we get the internet going. So it'll be a virtual event hosted in June 2021. It's probably going to be the biggest PropTech and digitalization event. And this promises to be a big one. Watch out for the announcements on that one. And I'd like to end with an inspirational quote from Sam Shepard. He said, "Everyone wants a piece of land. It's the only sure investment. It can never depreciate like a car or washing machine. Land will only double its value in 10 years. So thank you once again for joining the REI Talk webinar today, and to our panel from Crossways. It's been fantastic. This is Neil Peterson of Real Estate Investors signing out. Stay safe and successful investing. Thank you, everybody.